So there are a few things that are still cheap here in Guam, and these are things that people actually live off of, people depend on. Imported used cars, right? Everything is pretty much free when it comes to parking here. Fishing here on the island is pretty much free. Any beach you go to on Guam is free. You actually can just shop at Ross. You just go to the filling stations and you get that purified, clean water. Don't drink the tap water. You just go to the little convenience stores that are in the villages and you can get lunch plates there. You can get food for relatively cheap. There's a place, like a store here called Honey House, and they sell a lot of things for very cheap. You know, Guam is an expensive place to live. The list for things that are expensive would be much longer than the list of things that are cheaper and still affordable. But hey, what's up everyone, welcome back to the video. I don't know if you can see me that well from this far away. It's pretty windy today, but today we're talking about Guam on a budget. So we're going to be discussing the things that are cheap here on the island and the things that are very expensive. So originally I was going to make this video just about the things that are still cheap here on Guam, but then I figured it might be too short, so I might as well add in some of the things that are expensive. But they're not really going to be in any particular order. I will do the things that are still cheap first, and then the things that are more expensive after. And if you're wondering where I'm walking right now, I'm walking along the main road here. This is Route 3. If you go all the way down that way, it heads to the center of the island. So currently, as you can see, beyond the fence is a military, and then going north just goes to the end of the island here. So I'm pretty close to the end of the island in the north. But this is where I'm going for a walk and talk to tell you guys about the cheap things and the expensive things here in Guam. I figured it would be a little bit better than, you know, sitting at a desk inside the house doing it. So at least you guys can have a little bit of a view. As you can tell, the sun behind me is setting right now. It is 5 o'clock, 5:02 right now. So it's a perfect time to be outside, nice and cool. And somebody is barbecuing across the road there in the neighborhood. So smells so good, I really want to eat, but gotta make this video first. My hat's gonna fly off. I don't know if you guys can tell, but that's how windy it is. So there are a few things that are still cheap here in Guam, and these are things that people actually live off of, people depend on. These make living here a lot easier. So we're gonna start with the first one. The first one that we're gonna start with is actually Japanese cars. So yeah, imported used cars, right? So here in Guam, if you didn't know, it's the same as the States because it's a US territory. Your steering wheel is on the left in your car and you drive on the right side of the road. Well, here in Guam, it is perfectly legal to buy a car from Japan that has the wheel on the opposite side of the car, and then you can just drive it here. So a lot of people actually buy these Japanese imported cars. They either import them themselves or they buy one from a local dealership here. There's a few dealerships that actually sell used Japanese cars, and now the market for them is a bit higher than they would be if you imported it yourself, you know, because they got to make their money back from the importation fees and all that. So you can buy a used car here in Guam, and the price of them are going to range, but you can find used cars from Japan for a couple $1,000. If you ship it here yourself, you know, you're talking probably about $3,000-$4,000 or something. Some people sell them for cheaper here on the island that are already used, that they imported or bought here, but you can find a lot of them around, I think, $5,000. The biggest place to buy them here on the island is the Facebook Marketplace. And in terms of Japanese cars, you'll find everything from Japanese little like box cars or K cars, K trucks, and then you'll even see Nissan Skyline, and you know, sporty cars like that cost a lot much more money. But if you're going to be living here on Guam and you want a cheap car, that's one option, is just to import it straight from Japan for less than probably $10,000, and it'll be pretty reliable. The island's small, you don't need to drive fast, so they are an affordable option. So another thing that is free here in Guam, believe it or not, is the beach. Any beach you go to on Guam is free. It's public, right? Especially the ones by the hotels, they're free. Even though the hotel is there, the hotel has their chairs on the beach, they're free. You can swim there. You can't sit on the chairs and stuff because you need to be part of the hotel or rent them. But all beaches here on Guam are free. And another place to show that is actually in the north, Reardon, just straight ahead here. there is U.S. Fish and Wildlife. It is a national refuge for, local animals and plants on the island. So even there, you can go to the beach and it's free. So here on the island, there are no beaches that you need to pay an access to. There's no, public, like in the States, you'll have a lot of beaches where it's the public beach, and sometimes you need to pay to go there or you need to pay to park there. Not here. It's free everywhere. And that leads me into the next thing that is still free here on the island, and that is parking. You can park pretty much anywhere on the island for free. There's no meters. You don't have to pay. Now you can get a citation or a parking ticket for maybe illegal parking or doing something wrong. But yeah, everything is pretty much free when it comes to parking here, unless you're at the airport. Even when you go down to the hotels and the places like that, you want to go to the restaurants, the parking is free. You don't have to pay. You can park on the street there. If there's parking, it's free. If you go down towards where the office buildings are in the business district, like where the government stuff is, it's free there too. It's just first come, first serve. I have honestly never seen paid parking here on the island. I don't know, maybe there would be paid parking for a special event or something, but still, parking is free, and it has always been free other than the airport, as I mentioned. If you do go to the airport and you're gonna park, I think it's similar to like in the States where you're paying per day or per week, and it can be pretty costly. So you're talking about maybe $10 a day. So that's the only place that I have seen actual paid parking, which is good. That's nice. Although in the future, they might implement paid parking here on the island, for one reason being because there are just too many people and too many cars. So eventually it's just going to get more clogged, and so maybe they'll eventually make people have to pay for parking depending on where they go. All right, just making my way on this walk here. It's still feeling pretty good. There's not many people here, but the next thing I want to talk about is fishing. Fishing here on the island is pretty much free. And when I say free, I mean it is free because you don't need a fishing license, as I've been told. Pretty much you can fish in most places on the island, and you don't need an actual fishing license like you do all over the United States, which is interesting because I would think here, being an island, it's more likely to be overfished. I would just think that having a fishing license is just better overall, and that money can go a long way in supporting the fisheries and stuff like that. Now, although I said fishing is free, you still have to pay to get your fishing supplies, your fishing pole, your lures, your bait, and all that. But like when you go fishing around the island, it's free. You don't have to pay to fish anywhere, from my knowledge that I understand. If you want to go on a boat and do a fishing charter and things like that, of course, you're gonna have to pay for that, and that's not free. So that's another thing that is still cheap here in Guam, because it is kind of free, and you don't have to pay for a license and stuff like you do in other places around the world and in the States. All right, next one we're gonna talk about is what I'm wearing here, right? Clothing. So if you wanna do some shopping on the island, you really don't wanna spend much money, you actually can just shop at Ross. Here on the island, Ross is one of the biggest stores to go shopping at for clothing, for miscellaneous items, household goods and stuff like that. There are, how many locations on the island? I think there's 3 Ross locations. So here on the island, if you are looking for cheap goods, cheap clothing and stuff, you shop at Ross, because you can get t-shirts and stuff for like $10 or less sometimes, pants for less than $20, and then even some food items and household things are just really cheap, and everyone shops at Ross on the island. Holy crap, it's windy. So yeah, Ross, that is a place here on the island that's pretty cheap, where you can save money when you want to go shopping. Cheaper than other stores like, Macy's. We still have a Macy's here, so Macy's is actually pretty pricey. And then even you have other stores, thrift shops and stuff like that, smaller stores in like GPO and Micronesia Mall and stuff. But I would say Ross is the go-to, the number one for many people, right? Especially people that don't want to spend a lot of money on that stuff. But you do have to be cautious, because some of the stuff is just not that great of quality and doesn't last that long, especially with the heat here. The heat fades your clothes very quickly, so sometimes t-shirts won't last that long, and yeah, it's just not that good like some other stores around the world. But hey, it's Ross, it's good. All right, I've walked a decent way here, but I think I'm gonna turn around and start heading back this way, do some walking, but tell you more about the other things, right? If you don't know, here on the island, some of the water is pretty contaminated. The water is pretty hard in areas, so sometimes it's not good to use tap water. And actually, you just shouldn't use tap water here, so you're better off to buy filtered water. Here on the island, there are plenty of water stations, or water filling stations where you can fill up 5 gallons, 1 gallons, whatever size you have. And that's the best way to go, and it's pretty cheap. So here on the island, you can fill up a 5-gallon of water for, how much is it? I think it's $2 or $2.50, depending on the place you go, because some places have different prices, but very, very affordable. So that's the best thing to do here on the island, is if you want to drink water, you want to use it for cooking, and you want the best water, you just go to the filling stations and you get that purified, clean water. Don't drink the tap water, especially in the north here. They have been known to find all sorts of chemicals like pesticides and stuff in the tap water that is linked to all sorts of bad diseases and stuff. So don't use the tap water if you're coming here, and if you're going to have a shower and stuff like that, and if you're gonna, have a house and maybe you want better water, you just put on a softener or a filter head for the shower. That's the best thing to do, and make your water much more clean and purified. So check out this. There's this giant hole blast pit along the pathway here that's been here for a year at least, I think. I don't know what ever happened. Maybe it was from the military, but they excavated it, put a bunch of rocks on the side, and then they left it. I wonder what this is about, why it has not been filled in yet, but it's kind of strange. Imagine if you're a car and you crash off the side of the road and you land in that ditch. It's gonna hurt. It's gonna be serious. So crazy. All right, got a little distracted there. Let's continue on here. Okay guys, we're losing daylight here. As you can see, the sun is going behind the clouds and usually gets dark about 6:30 or so here. So let's continue on with a couple more. So here on the island, eating out is very expensive, which we'll talk about. But if you want some cheaper meals, you go to the mom and pop stores. Those are the local convenience stores, not the corporate ones like Shell and stuff. You just go to the little convenience stores that are in the villages, and you can get lunch plates there. You can get food for relatively cheap. I've talked about it before in other videos, but you're talking about sometimes $5 for a little meal, $6, $7, $8, and so on like that. Usually, Filipino meals, barbecue plates, stuff with rice. They have sandwiches, and they have Japanese stuff. So if you are looking for some cheap eats, maybe you're gonna eat it every day or something, you could go about it that way. You just pay less than $10 for a person, and you have a decent meal compared to what you're gonna pay for the higher quality and the higher price stuff in the restaurant. But as I'm pointing the camera here, check it out. There's these little rock statues. I don't know who did this, maybe the guys that mow the grass. I think they made these rock statues into little laddie stones to resemble the culture here, or to showcase an image of the culture here. But that's pretty cool to see on this side of the road. All right guys, one more thing I want to talk about that's very affordable here on the island is buying accessories for your phone, little gadgets for stuff. There's a place, a store here called Honey House. There's multiple locations, and they sell a lot of things for very cheap. A lot of it is lower quality, but it gets the job done. For instance, you need a new phone case, but you don't want to spend $30, $40 on a phone case. You go to Honey House and you can get it for in between $5 and $20. I've bought in some really cheap phone cases for about $8, and they actually lasted and they held up. So that's a good option. You can get charging accessories, cords and stuff for relatively cheap. They are aftermarket stuff, third party, whatever, probably from China and stuff. And they're good for your phone though, and they work instead of buying the high price stuff from the phone company. Yeah, so if you're looking for some affordable gadgets and stuff, especially for electronics and just other little trinkets, keychains and stuff like that, you're gonna want to go to Honey House. Just look up Honey House on Google Maps. There's multiple locations, as I said, and it's a great place to shop for relatively cheap prices. So why not save some money when you can, as cost of living and expenses on this island are through the roof. So that's your best bet, guys. Check it out, Honey House. All right, there you have it, guys. That's 8 things that are still relatively cheap here on the island, or very affordable compared to what they could be. So I hope those things stay affordable, and You know, the people here on the island need these, they rely on these things. So if they do become more expensive, it's not going to be good, because as we know, life on the island is just going up. There's no going down. So now let's talk about some of the things that are just really expensive here on the island that you might know of or you might not be aware of. Now, of course, because I said, you know, Guam is an expensive place to live, the list for things that are expensive would be much longer than the list of things that are cheaper and still affordable. But I'm not going to name everything, right? There's other things, but these are just some of the things I want to bring to your attention if you don't know, which you should know. And some of them are actually very obvious, I would say. So let's start off with, you know, rent, right? Rent is very expensive. If you're looking for a 1-bedroom, you're probably going to find that for, you know, around $1,000 or less, depending on where you find that. Or if you're looking for a place just for yourself, you know, not sharing it with roommates or just for your family, it's even more from there. I think the average rent price last time I looked was $2,500. So that's pretty expensive, especially for, you know, just a 1-bedroom house, you know. Rent is high, and it's always going to be high here on the island. It probably will never go down, so it does kind of suck. So when you find a rental deal, make sure you hop on that and you try to get it, and you don't let it go, because they're hard to come by here in Guam. You have to know somebody sometimes. And with rent comes utilities, right? Well, within utilities is electricity, and electricity on the island is just ridiculous. Look at that, guys. Like I was saying, you see that silver car? That's from Japan. It was a right-hand drive. I think it was a Suzuki. There you go. But yeah, as I said, utilities are expensive, and the main component of that is electricity. Here in Guam, it's very hot. It's hard to live without air conditioner. Some people do it. I don't know how they do it, honestly, because it's not always you have wind like you have today. So you're best off to have air conditioner. It just makes living more comfortable and more enjoyable. And honestly, when you do have an AC and you run it quite often, depending on the size of your house and the efficiency of your device, you're talking about an electric bill that can be over $200, $300, upwards of $700, and even more depending on how much you use, right? So that's one thing to keep in mind, especially if you're going to be coming here to Guam and living here. Electricity is expensive, and that's something that needs to be fixed. It needs to be better, so that way local people here living here can afford it better, because who wants to pay a super high electric bill like that? And I don't know if the price will ever come down, because it seems to be going up over the last few years. Next up on the list of expensive things are the things you're seeing right here in front of the camera. Cars. Cars are expensive on the island. If you want to buy a brand new car, man, you're going to pay a lot of money. You're going to have a high car payment. And of course, that's kind of how it is all over the world, all over the country and stuff now. But here in Guam, they're marked up a little bit higher, of course, because of importing a lot of cars here, and just certain reasons that I'm not too well adversed on, but I do know when you go by the dealership and you see prices, it's much higher than it should be. Like, for instance, if you want to buy a brand new Ford truck or something, you're probably going to pay near, $80,000 for that. Like, that is crazy. So if you are coming to the island, you plan on buying a car, hopefully your income can support that, and you can pay for such a expensive vehicle just to drive around this small little island and not go far. Honestly, it's better just to buy a used car for the time here, unless you're planning on being here for a very long time, or shipping your car over here if you can afford it. But just keep in mind that cars are expensive here, very expensive. All right, as you guys can see, the sun is setting. It is still bright, it's still a little warm, but man, it's blasting me in the face here, so I'm glad I got my shades on. But we're on to the next one here. And with cars being expensive is also the gas that you need to drive them. Here on the island, gas prices don't change that much, as I've mentioned in other videos. As of filming this in February of 2026, gas prices are $4.67 for regular gas. And that usually fluctuates a little bit. It goes up 10, 20 cents. I've only seen it, I think, $5.09 or something like that at the highest. But generally, the gas price over the last few years have stayed over $4.50, and that's pretty much where it always sits. So gas is much more expensive here compared to the mainland, where gas is almost $2 a gallon last time I checked. So if you're coming to Guam and you don't have access to the military base where you can get the gas at the mainland price, just expect to be paying a lot for gas, especially if you have a big vehicle like a big truck here on the island. Man, you'll be paying like more than $100 a week probably for gas, which is just not smart if you want to live on this island, to be honest. All right, the next thing that is super expensive I want to tell you guys about is healthcare. If you don't know, there are a lot of people on this island that actually don't have health insurance because it's just simply too expensive. And if your healthcare isn't offered through your work, you're more than likely not to get healthcare. That's the truth here, because if you want to get healthcare for a single person, you don't get it through your work, you're looking at over $1,000 a month. And that's no lie. If you look it up, you can see that. Maybe you can get lucky and find it cheaper, but some of the people that don't get it through work, they try to get Medicaid. Very hard to get here because, you know, it's only for certain people, of course. You need to meet those specifications. But in general, healthcare is just absolutely through the roof, just like it is in other places around the states too. But if you're coming here to Guam and you plan on having healthcare, make sure you do your research before. Hopefully try to get it through where you work, because that's the best option to make it more affordable. And that's really the only way to go, to be honest, unless you just don't care to be uninsured. And since healthcare is so expensive, that leads me to the next thing that's super expensive on the island, and that is gym memberships. As you can see, I'm out here along the road walking. This is free. This is costing me no money other than to drive here, to get here from where I stay. So here on the island, if you are planning on moving here or whatever, and you want to have a gym membership, make sure you look up where you're going to go to the gym, because the gyms here aren't very affordable. The main gym here, as I've talked about before, Paradise Fitness, you're looking at a membership of what? $1,200 almost for the year. So that's more than $100 a month. And that's just how it is here. A lot of the gyms here are very expensive. If you have base access, then lucky you, because you get the gym at no price, really, right? There are other places, CrossFit and stuff, and of course those are like places where you're gonna have to pay a lot, you know, for certain classes. So that's gonna be high no matter what, wherever you go. But for standard gyms here, you're talking about $100 a month at least, which is just crazy. You might be able to find a couple or one for under $100, but it's not like in the States where you have Paradise, or it's not like in the States where you have Planet Fitness and those other corporate gyms where you're paying $10, $20, $30 a month. Here, you're paying triple that, which is just crazy. So best advice to you is just work out outside when you can, when it's cool, when it's not so hot. Mornings and evening, go for a run, go for a walk, do something like that. Go swimming at the beach. That's the best. Save the money and don't spend the ridiculous prices on these gym memberships at these fitness places where honestly the equipment is not that great and they're overcrowded, so it's not worth it. Now, you want to live healthy, right? You want to live on the island. You're living on the island, so you're like, oh wow, I'm gonna eat a lot of fruit, all that sort of stuff. Coconuts, yeah, you can get them. You can get them from local vendors, you can get them from the supermarket. Honestly though, majority of fruit on this island is very expensive. I covered it in some of my videos where you're paying, you know, for blueberries, strawberries, stuff like that, more than $10 for a little box. And that's because everything is imported here. There really aren't farms on the island. Most of the local fruit that you're going to eat is going to be, of course, some coconut. You're going to eat papaya. You're going to eat breadfruit. If you don't know what that is, just look it up. There's not a whole lot of local fruit being produced here. A lot of people do try to grow their own trees though, that way they can harvest their own fruit. But in general, fruit here on the island is just super expensive, and sometimes the quality isn't great because it has to be shipped all the way in. So sometimes it doesn't make it here in the best form. So keep that in mind if you're coming to Guam and you want to eat a lot of fruit because you're living the island life. It's going to cost you a pretty penny. All right guys, let's talk about a couple more things that are super expensive here on the island to wrap up this video. When it comes to eating, as we're talking about fruit and stuff, right? eating out, going to the restaurants. There are a lot of restaurants on the island, a lot of good food. That's what is good about Guam. One of the best things about Guam is the cuisine. You have a mixture of so much stuff. If you've never heard about it, you have Korean, Chinese, Japanese. You have a lot of American fast food in American places. You have the local cuisine, the chamorro dishes, a lot of Filipino dishes here, and just some other stuff as well. So here on the island, if you want to eat good food, you want to have a variety of things, you're going to have to go out and you're going to have to eat at different places, and that's going to cost a lot. You know, the average price of a meal, I think, is like $15 or something like that. Yeah, sure, some places you can get it for less, but the cost of food is pretty expensive. For instance, if you want to go to McDonald's and you want a Big Mac meal, I think you're paying like $15 or something like that. So keep that in mind when you do come to Guam, that the cost of food and for eating out, it also costs a lot of money. It's not cheap. Now check out that view as I'm ending this walk here. I'm almost to the end. The island's going down there. The sun is setting. It's looking good. Two more things that are expensive and probably will always be expensive is the hotels, as I've talked about on the island. If you want to stay at a local hotel, you want to have a staycation, or you're just coming here to the island to stay at some hotels and stuff, make sure you do your research, because a lot of the hotels are more than $200 a night, some $300. You can find some for cheaper, around $100, $150, but then of course you're losing quality and you're losing being at the beachfront property, right? So keep that in mind if you are coming to the island, that hotels are super expensive and they're not affordable. They are not affordable, and they are targeting a lot of the people that want to spend a lot of money or just don't care, are just gonna come here and spend a ton of money. And so with that, the last point I want to mention is flights. Now, if you're leaving the island, once you live here on the island, you're like, oh great, I can go to all these countries, I can live nearby, I can travel nearby and visit different places. Well, actually, it's pretty expensive. I think round trip from here to the Philippines, which is the closest flight, that in Japan, you're talking about $400 round trip. So flying is not super cheap. If you want to go to some of the islands that are close by too, those are even more expensive. Like last time I heard, like flying to Palau, round trip is like over $1,000 or something. So, you know, when it comes to traveling from the island to other islands, to other countries nearby, even to the States, it's so expensive, and it's only going to go up. Of course, flights are just increasing everywhere around the world, but especially here with the limited airlines and stuff, yeah, prices of flights are just not friendly. So keep that in mind if you're moving here. All right, guys, there you have it. That's a quick video on some of the things that are still affordable and cheap here in Guam. Obviously, it's not a lot, so keep in mind that prices are always going to go up and things are very expensive here. So if you are going to move here or you're going to be living here, do your research before you come. If you have questions, let me know. Just ask them. I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability and what I know and what I've experienced living here on Guam. But everything's pretty expensive, as you can see from this video. I've named a lot of things that are expensive, so yeah, just keep that in mind. And that's gonna be it for this video. I'll see you guys soon somewhere on the island and from another video. I don't know about what, but if you have ideas, you want to see something from the island, you want to know something, drop a comment below, and yeah, I'll try to make that happen. But for now, I'll see you guys soon. Peace.